Welcome into Four Score, the podcast. My name is Andrew May, alongside Rob Dupre, to break down everything sports. This podcast has been a long time in the making. A couple months now we've been planning it, and we finally have the logistics figured out. And what a good time to start, because there's a lot of things to unpack on episode 1.
And listen, this is nothing out of the ordinary, right? When there's been disputes in other sports, there's been seismic gaps. But they've been solved because both parties were at least willing to get to the table and fight through it and talk. And it may have gotten intense, and it may not have been in good spirits at all times, but they at least tackled the problem at hand and found a way to solve it eventually, right? What they're doing here, neither side is negotiating in good faith, mostly the owners, who are radio silent for most of the offseason. I mean, I have a friend of mine who, he's a big-time Mets fan, watches as many games as he possibly can, but he's not really in the know as far as, daily news and notes. And he's like, I don't follow the right people on Twitter. I don't have alerts set up on my phone. He's like, can you explain to me what the current state is and why this negotiation is taking so long? And this is the analogy I gave him. I said, okay. I said, let's say you asked your job for a raise, right? And they said, okay, we'll think about giving you a raise, but you're not allowed to work until we figure out what your new salary is going to be. So they locked you out from working, and you didn't hear anything back from them for 2.5 months. And then 2.5 months later, they finally get back to you and they say, okay, we're not going to increase your salary, but whenever you want to get something from the cafeteria, we'll give you 15% off. I said, that's essentially what's happening. Right. I said, how pissed off would you be if you were in those shoes? You'd say, fuck this company, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And that's what the fans are going to do. Yeah, and, I actually read a report, I meant to mention this before. It was at least an encouraging sign yesterday, because both parties, although they weren't in the same room at the same time for a really prolonged period of time, they released on the complex for upwards of 8 hours. I mean, proposals were thrown back and forth, conversations were had amongst themselves, and they got back into the room and countered and whatever. But they at least spent time together, where the last couple meetings lasted no longer than 15 to 30 minutes, and that was it. But then today, they met for a long period of time again, and it seemed like it was more of the same as yesterday. And you thought, okay, progress is being made, whatever. But then you got a report, I believe it was Aaron Drellich of The Athletic who reported it, said that the MLB today requested from the Players Union access to a third-party mediator for a second time today.
That's a disaster.
And the Players Union is turning it down. They want to deal directly with the league. And you know what? I don't blame them, because what that signals to me for the owners, it's not that there's too much of a gap where they feel a deal can't be done. If you get a third party in there, like look at salary arbitration, you go to a third party arbiter, right? And what ends up happening is they compare your production to people who were paid in past years with similar production. And that's how the dollar amount is agreed upon on what your salary should be, right? When you ask for that sort of third-party mediator in this, what are they going to do, Rob? They're going to base the last few CBAs that were signed and come up with a new proposal based on the last couple of CBAs. And everybody knows that the players hated the previous CBAs and they were working against them. So the league wants to bring in a third party to come in and make a proposal, because the third party is going to make a proposal that's favorable to the owners.
Absolutely.
I have to start off with what's pretty much been the burning story all day long, and that's the comments that Blake Snell made last night on his Twitch account. Boy, oh boy, I was chomping at the bit to get on here because I needed to air my grievances with this guy, Rob. So please just bear with me and give me a couple minutes, because I don't even know where to begin. I don't even have any words to describe the optic that Blake Snell has created for himself, other than distasteful, tone-deaf, idiotic. I mean, I'm far from a wordsmith when it comes to the English language, but those are just a few words that come to mind right away. So Blake Snell was streaming last night on Twitch. And for those of you who don't know what Twitch is, it's like a streaming platform for video gamers. They stream while they're playing. And Snell is one of the many athletes who streams while they play Call of Duty or Fortnite, or in the case of a lot of baseball players, MLB The Show. But anyway, Snell was streaming last night, and he was talking about the proposal given by the owners to the Players Union regarding the logistics to get the 2020 MLB season underway. And he said that he would not play for a reduced salary this season, and that there's too much of a health risk. So, at first glance there, I sort of agree fundamentally with a player wanting his money. I get that, okay? The money that these players signed for is well earned, and the MLB is a multi-billion-dollar industry, and these players provide a product that's highly coveted around the world. So they deserve every penny that they get. But this isn't about that. This is about the fact that his comments about, quote, not playing until I get mine, they're as dumb and as tone deaf and as distasteful as humanly possible. There are 30 million people in the country right now, Rob, who are unemployed. People who are considered non-essential workers have been fired or laid off, some of which are unsure about where they're getting the money to provide their next meal or how they're going to make their next mortgage payment or rent payment. There are small business owners who have been grinding and fighting tooth and nail for years to be able to create a living for themselves, who now have been forced to close and file for bankruptcy. There's 80,000 people who have died because of this virus. And you're going to say, I ain't risking getting the Rona unless I get my money. Are you for real? Where do we even muster up the cojones to make a statement like that when the unemployment rate is skyrocketing? It's at a rate that we've never even seen before. If you think there's too much of a health risk to play, then that's fine. I wouldn't disagree with you. If you think that there should be stipulations written into the CBA that players who, participate during these times, they get more adequate health benefits down the road or whatever, that's fine. If you don't want to leave your family during an existential health crisis, that is fine. But for the love of all things holy, do not make this about money. And to be honest, Rob, I'm not necessarily knocking him for wanting his money, because if I was in his shoes, I'd probably want the money too. It's greed, and whether you want to admit it or not, everyone has some form of greed. Everyone possesses greed in some form or fashion. And I would bet that he speaks on behalf of a lot of the players with his statement. I think a lot of the players might agree with him. But in a climate like we're in today, to publicize it in the fashion in which he did, it's absolutely nauseating, to say the least. Nauseating. Shame on Blake Snell for what he said. How in your right mind can you make comments like that about your money when there's people who are staring at the ceiling up all hours of the night wondering where they're going to get the money to feed their family, and you're worried about getting your money, $1.5 million to pitch every fifth day? Give me a break. Give me a break. If you don't want to play, then don't play. If you feel like the risk is way higher than the reward, then don't play. But don't make this about money, and don't use public health as a shield for you being greedy and wanting your full $10 million, which, as I said, these players earn every cent of their contract. But that's something out of the playbook of Bill Belichick, where, hey, I'm the head coach of this football team. I have the keys to this team, and if I see something I don't like, I am going to get hands-on and fix it myself. I'm going to give the coaches the ability to change what they're responsible to change, and if I don't see improvement, it falls on me, and I take it into my own hands. Not only is he holding these players accountable for their actions, but he's taking accountability himself because he's the head coach of this team, and that's what you love to see.
We've seen him play well in
Rob,
spurts.
It's not even spurts. It's plays here and there. And that's what leads me to criticize Sam so much, because when you have a quarterback that's so highly touted, normally those spurts are maybe one full game. Like Daniel Jones, there were a couple occasions last year where he played good games from beginning to end. I can't remember Sam Darnold playing a really good game from beginning to end. I can think about him making a couple of nice plays throughout the course of the game, maybe 3 or 4 plays that you could point to and say, wow, this kid has it. That's not consistent enough for me. I need to see from the second the first ball is snapped to the clock hits 0, I want to see a good, complete game. And I haven't seen that from him. And to me, I don't see a franchise quarterback there if you're not able to do that at least once by accident. I mean, you've been in the league for 3 years now, and you couldn't string together one full game? That's my biggest issue with him.
Is Michael Conforto worth a contract extension? Is he worth it? Now, if you listen to my other podcast, I've been on the record. I can go digging for the audio files, and I'll put my name to it. I'm not shying away from it because I did say this. I said that Michael Conforto had to be extended, especially when the Mets did not go and get George Springer. When they were outbid for George Springer in free agency, which I was very against. I thought that he was a perfect fit on this team. I thought you needed to go the extra mile, and you needed to make sure that that guy was wearing blue and orange this season. But they didn't. So once that happened, I was on the record as saying, Francisco Lindor and Michael Conforto both need to be extended. And if either of them are not extended, It's inexcusable. It's a fireable offense for whoever is in charge of making the decisions. Now, as we sit here a week into the 2021 season, I feel like a buffoon for saying that. What has Michael Conforto shown you to warrant getting a contract extension north of $200 million, no less? Now, we knew he was going to command a lot of money, and especially him being a Scott Boras client. I was thinking initially maybe the same figures that George Springer got from Toronto would probably get it done. 6 years, $150 million, something in that range. But through the first week of the season, you really have to start asking yourself whether or not this guy is worth it. And I like Conforto. I do. He's an easy guy to root for. He looks like a very easygoing guy, always smiling, right? He's an easy guy to root for. And he's been a good player throughout his Mets tenure. But for the love of all things holy, can this guy ever get a clutch hit? Can he ever come through with a clutch hit? Think about it. This is his 7th season as a Met. When has this guy ever come up with a clutch hit? What? He had the one hit in 2019 against the Nationals off Sean Doolittle. We all remember that game, right? Trailing 6-3 in the 9th inning. Todd Frazier hits the tying 3-run homer. And then Conforto comes through with the walk-off hit. Okay, that's one. Okay, he had the 2-home run game in Game 4 of the World Series in 2015. All right, that's 2. 2 games in which he had a big hit. When else has this guy gotten a big hit? And this isn't a podcast just to bury Michael Conforto, but it's a legitimate question at this point. Is he worth the amount of money that he's going to command? Because when the going gets tough, he shrivels up and disappears. He can never get a big hit. And again, a lot of people are going to say, calm down, don't overreact. We're only a week into the season. Okay, through that first week, Michael Conforto has stranded 20 guys on base. 20! That's unheard of. 20 guys left on base? 3 hits and 20 at-bats, 9 strikeouts, and 20 men left on base.
I'm going to give the Mets a slight pass here, and here's the reason why. I don't think that the Mets' inactivity or inability to get a pitcher was due to a lack of trying. At the end of the day, you cannot force other teams to fall in love with your prospects. And I mentioned this in a text thread to you guys earlier in the week. The Mets have one of the better farm systems in baseball when it comes to their top 100 guys. They got 6 guys in the top 100.
They're top heavy.
They're top heavy. That's what it is. They don't have organizational depth, whereas the Yankees, they don't have those top 100 guys. I mean, Jason Dominguez is one. The kid that's toting the rubber for the Yankees tonight, Luis Gil, he's supposed to be a big-time prospect too. But besides that, there's not a lot of top guys. There's a lot of organizational depth. And that's why the Yankees were able to facilitate trades for guys like Rizzo and guys like Gallo. When it came to the Mets, every negotiation that they were in, no matter what player they were trying to get back in return, opposing teams were asking for the Ronnie Mauricios and Francisco Alvarez's and the Brett Beatties of the world because they were not enamored with any of their other prospects. And when it came time to actually make a trade, when the trade deadline was actually coming, that 4:00 deadline, they said, you know what, we're going to have to part with one of these top guys. I think Crow Armstrong was probably the guy they felt most comfortable with letting go of, and they dangled him out there and settled for whatever they can get, and that was Javier Baez. The one issue I do have is that, according to Mike Puma, who covers the Mets for the New York Post, they had their choice between Zach Davies and Trevor Williams, and the Mets viewed them as equal and decided to take Trevor Williams because he had minor league options. That is just absolute lunacy because Zach Davies is miles ahead of Trevor Williams as a pitcher. And
Not even close.
And you didn't need a pitcher that had minor league options. You needed pitching help on the actual 26-man roster. So that I can understand your frustration with.
We don't mind that, but we'll be doing episode number 10.
10.
Double digits, baby.
And
That's
Aaron,
a little bit of an anniversary. We could have a little bit of a celebration.
Want to get some cocktails and some Chinese
Have some
food?
cocktails.
No MSG?
No MSG. Some Mai Tais and Chinese food with no MSG.
On that note, for Rob Dufresne, I'm Andrew May. Thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll see you next time.